as you can see, I made some cardboard angles and I put them on the end of the table here. But what I'm going to do now is build an embankment here and fill in the median here between the two lanes. And to do that, I'm going to be using a method that I learned from the YouTuber Sparkshot, aka Knuckles. If you remember, I brought him up back in part 1 of this series. And I'll leave a link to his method if you wish to check it out. But he calls this cheap and easy hills. And to do this, he uses cardboard, old newspaper, and PVA glue. Now, I'm using multi-purpose glue, but I think this will work just as well. And from what I've seen with his method, it seems to produce good results, and I want to see how it works in this application as well. And so, basically, we got some newspaper here, and as Knuckles says, these are made to deceive people and talk absolute crap. So, this is basically his method of also putting good use to these old papers. And to do this, you just get papers, and I'm just going to start scrunching them up and putting them down in here and basically start filling in the median. I'm going to do this first, and then I'll focus on the embankment. So the next step is going to be to get some paper here, and I'm just going to put a bunch of glue all over this. I'm not going to go too sparingly on it. And just spread it around. Try not to make a mess, which obviously is not going to happen. Spread it all over this. Maybe a little bit more. Kind of need more of a place to work. This is kind of a small work area for what I'm doing. But just get that pretty much coated with glue. Set that aside for now. And then the next step is to take this paper and put it over top of the paper that I put down. Sort of like this. Move it a little bit. Fold it over the ends there. There we go, that looks pretty good. And I'm going to repeat the process with another piece of paper here. Same deal. Put a bunch of glue on it. And I guess the reason Knuckles likes this method, and I mean, I'm kind of the same way myself, is it's cheap, inexpensive, easy, lightweight, and once everything's done, it is pretty solid. And apparently, according to him, this is the best method he's found. I mean, everyone's different. Everyone, you know, has their own idea of how to do things when it comes to things like this. But a method I used to use when I was doing model train layouts, and my first model train layout I used plaster for a lot of this landscaping. I'd go in, put newspaper down, then put plaster cloth over top of it. And that was nice, but the only problem is it kind of added weight to the table real quick, and I do remember the table was honestly pretty heavy and not easy to move around, which is why I never took it to any train shows. But this here should be a lot lighter and shouldn't have that issue. Just put that over there. I want to try to keep that level to an extent. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can change this as you go along. Now the next step is to go back and put another layer of glue and paper across what I already put down. So paper's getting kind of nasty. But another layer of paper over top of this. Not sure if I mentioned it yet or not, but you basically want 3 layers. Or at least that's what Knuckles recommends. You might have to do more, might have to do less. Probably depends on the type of glue you're using. Truth be told, looking at this, maybe I should have packed a little more paper in, because I've got a bit of a mound here, but this is all sort of dipped down in. Doesn't matter, you know, elevation varies. So that's the median done, and I think it turned out reasonably good. Maybe would have liked to have had more of a mound here, but I'll settle for that, I guess. Could possibly go in and fix that here if I want to. But now I'm going to start on the embankment, and to do that, I'm going to go ahead and put a layer of glue on the table, stuff paper in, and pretty much build up the way I want it, and do about the same thing I did here. The only difference is I want to have, you know, the angled slope. So start off by putting some glue down. Need something to spread that around with. Through there. You get a little bit on this foam back here. Start building up an embankment. Try to stay back a little ways from that line because I don't want to come out any further into the field than I already have. So I left this overnight for the glue to dry, and when I came back this morning, we can now see that's a nice hard surface. So Knuckles' method seems to produce good results. I'm quite happy with that. But you'll notice that I stopped right over here, and that's because the next thing I want to do is go ahead and get the bridges put in before I go any further with this project. Because if I do it the other way around, I'll probably run into the issue that I'll have to cut out some of my landscaping to get the bridges to fit properly. But I also want the bridges to be removable, and that's something I got to take into consideration as well. But once I get the bridges built and fitted in place, I can go ahead and do here what I've done over here, and also fill in this area in the middle. But what we're going to do now is head over to my workbench, because I actually got these boards here. These were left over from a showcase project I did, and they're about 1/4 inch thick, give or take. But I think these will work for what I want to do. Just got to take time and get them cut to length, fitted together, and I think these will work very well for a couple of bridges. Just as an example, this is a bridge that I built either last year or the year before, and I made this to fit between two of my display tables at the time. And how I made this is similar to how I'm going to build the other two. You can see I used the same boards. I screwed them together in 3 different places. The railings I made from balsa wood, and I used some roofing felt for the look of pavement, which roofing felt I've found to make some really great roads, but you do have to be selective on how you use it. But I'm going to basically do the same method with the other 2 bridges I'm going to build, only I'm not going to be using balsa wood for the railings. I'm actually going to, the railings are going to look more like concrete barriers, and it's also going to be a kind of a 3-lane versus a 2-lane. And I can actually show you an example of what I'm going to do here. If I just move the camera over to look at my computer screen, you can see this is what I'm going for. And on this bridge here, you can see the sides are more like concrete barriers. And the bridge in the background is the one I'm going to be aiming to build. And you can see it's pretty simple, just straight across like that. A couple of bridge piers here and there, and probably some shorter ones here on the ends. But overall, that's what I'm aiming for, and hopefully I can go ahead and make that out of these boards right here. See what happens. So I'm going to measure these boards at 20 inches because that's how long that the bridges are going to be. And the easiest way to cut these for me is going to be to take them up to the garage and cut them on the radial arm saw, which I'm going to go ahead and do off camera, because if you remember back in part 2 of this series, I was working on the table out in the garage. The lighting was total crap, and it's going to be even worse now because it's dark outside. So I'll be back as soon as I get these all cut. So there's my boards cut to the length they're supposed to be, and I also ended up with these extra pieces which, you know, were cut off the end of them. But what I'm going to do next is start assembling the 2 bases for the bridges, and I'm going to do something similar to what I did with the one I showed earlier, and that is I'm going to put boards in going this way to hold the 3 pieces together. Now the only difference is I don't want these to be seen, so I'm going to make them more like this, so that when I go to install, and I mean they'd be in the way anyways if they were like this, when I go to install the bottom rails, these will be hidden and you won't see them. So that's my plan, and pretty sure it'll look good once it's done. So there's the 2 bases for my 2 bridges. Went ahead and screwed the boards together and countersunk the screws. I don't know if that was necessary or not, just figured I'd do it just in case. These screws are a little long. You can see they stick quite a ways out the bottom. I had some shorter screws, but I couldn't find them, so I'll have to cut these off. But after that, I'm going to go ahead and test fit these on the display to see how they look. Test fitting the bridges, and one at the front looks pretty good. Seems to fit in just fine. A little bit of a gap right in here, but that'll be filled in with landscaping. The one at the back, though, seems to have a couple issues. First being it does not fit in where it's at. It's a little too long. And I think that's probably the foam over here is needs to be cut back a bit. But after that, this should fit in just fine. But the other issue, and I'm not sure if you'll notice it or not, the bridge sort of has a bit of a dip to it right here. And that's probably from this last board had a bit of a bend to it. I'm going to have to sort that out, and I think just when I put the bottom bit on and the railing, I think that'll straighten that out, hopefully. If not, I might have to take that board out and put a different one in. Just as a bit of fun, let's take a load over this bridge and see how it does. Bit of a bump there, but that can be sorted out. There you go.